I'm very, very pleased to welcome you here, all of you, to our time with Sister Natalie this afternoon, to consider women, leadership and the synodal process. Where to now? A hugely important question for everyone in our church. My name's Anne Walker. I probably know a lot of you. I'm the National Executive Director for CRA. Today is a special day to have Sister Natalie with us because it is the World Day for Consecrated Life. It's a way of celebrating each and every one of you, which is why we specifically chose this date to welcome Sister Natalie. So we really would like to recognise the gift of each of you in your ministry, in your prayers, in your presence, and just what you do each day to live out the call. So we thank you and we keep you in our prayers. We extend a very warm welcome to Sister Natalie. I can tell you she's had such a busy time since arriving in Australia. She's only been in North Sydney since 2 o'clock, and Sister Natalie's had an interview at the ABC, an interview with Catholic Outlook, a meeting with Pacific Church Partnerships, Advisory Network and the Ambassador. And here she is now. She finished that last meeting about 5 minutes ago. So I hope that you actually have a restful afternoon chatting as well. Another welcome to Chiara Porro, the Ambassador to the Holy See for Australia, and we're delighted to have you join us. Chiara's a wonderful supporter of religious, so thank you. We're also welcoming Liz Stone and Judy Halston, who are from the National Council of Churches and part of that Pacific Church Partnerships Advisory Network. I would also like to acknowledge the Institute of the Sisters of Mercy Australian PNG and the Sisters of Mercy of Parramatta for their support on the event, and in particular the Parramatta Diocese, who's been fabulous. And now I introduce to you Mary Claire Holland. Mary Claire is the Vice President of CRA, and she's also the Congregational Leader of the Dominican Sisters of Eastern Australia and the Solomon Islands. And she will lead us in prayer with Catherine Tyrrell and Judy Lawson.
So we come together today to acknowledge the richness of our past, to seek and name our present, to share the gifts we have and to support one another in discerning about our future church in the midst of mystery.
That very same day, a group of them were on their way into a common future, which lay just ahead, beyond what they could see. As they walked into the future, they talked all about the happenings among them. As they talked to one another, God joined them and moved with them. But something kept them from seeing and understanding. What was really happening?
So God entered their hearts and asked, "What is it that troubles you? What questions unsettle you?" The group stopped, full of fear and anxiety, and began to reflect, saying,
We thought it would be simpler. We thought our choices would be clearer. We thought our values and priorities would be more evident. We thought there would be more uniformity. We thought God would lead us more directly. We thought that conflicts, doubts, and confusions would lessen. We thought our future would be uncomplicated.
We had hoped things would not be so messy. We'd hoped our experiences would confirm what we knew, not change them. We had hoped our familiar theories would still fit. We had hoped. Now, some are saying that the future continues to challenge us in different ways. Is this God?
And God said, "How slow you are as a group. How hard it is for you to trust. Have I not promised to sustain you? And God spent time going over the history and showed the people God's own way of being with them.
Thank you, Mary Claire, Judy and Catherine. So we have a picture. So let me just catch up. I think this will move us straight on to the acknowledgement. It will. So if we could take a moment to consider where we are on Camaragal land.
In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia. We acknowledge the Indigenous people from all the countries of which we gather. We acknowledge their connections to land, sea, and community. Take a moment to acknowledge the land on which you stand. We pay our respect to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today.
And now, I have the great pleasure of introducing Sister Natalie to you all. I don't actually think she needs an introduction. There's been so much energy surrounding your visit to us. But Sister Natalie is a French Catholic religious sister and member of the congregation of Xavierian, Missionaries of Jesus Christ in France. In 2019, significantly, Sister Natalie was appointed a consultor to the Synod of Bishops. In February 2021, she was then appointed by Pope Francis as Under-Secretary of the Synod of Bishops. And in December 2021, she was appointed a member of the Dicastery for Communication. As Under-Secretary of the Synod of Bishops, she is the first woman to hold this position and the first woman with a right to vote at such a high-level gathering in the Vatican. Very significant to all of us. She's here in Australia on a very short, busy, intense, amazing trip before she heads over to Suva on Saturday. And we are really delighted and grateful to you for squeezing us in, making time to give your wisdom to us, your energy and your presence, and to celebrate with us the World Day for Consecrated Life. So I welcome you to take over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of you, all those who have taken part to the organization of this event or more meeting. It's really, really a great pleasure and a blessing to be with you today and to have this great chance also on this feast day for consecrated life to be with sisters and brothers in Christ, other religious like you. I had a chance every time I travel and I go in different local churches. Each time I meet sisters, religious, I feel we are in the same spirit and community. So it's really a great pleasure to be with you, and I am very, very grateful. I would like, to share some thought, but more than that, then also to listen to you and I hope we could have a dialogue. Because if I am here, it's not only to speak, it's also to learn, and to learn from you, to learn from the church in Australia, to learn from the sisters and religious in Australia. The first time I came to Australia was in 2008.
and it was the only time until now. I was a group leader for a group of young people for World Youth Day. And first we were welcome in the Diocese of Brisbane, in a small city north of Brisbane in a parish. And then the young people were welcome and accommodated in different families. And some young people were in a community of sisters. At the beginning, they said, oh, all the others, they are in families, we will be with the sisters. But at the end, they were so enthusiastic. And that was my first contact with the sisters in Australia, and I keep that in memory because it was a great testimony. We are living this time together today as the whole church is living this synod on synodality. In Australia, you have been also experiencing synodality through your plenary council. And as many times, the General Secretary of the Synod, Cardinal Mario Grech, reminds that in a way religious life is an icon of synodality. Or sometimes he uses the term a parable of synodality. In a sense, we have synodality in our DNA. And we have a lot also to share with the old church, but we haven't finished as religious community, we haven't finished also our own synodal conversion. I don't think any community can say we are perfectly synodal. So we are all on the road. And to talk about this topic today, I would like to remind us that if we are on the synodal journey together, it's really because at this stage of the reception of the Second Vatican Council, as Church today, it has been discerned, as Pope Francis is stating here, but it's not only Pope Francis, that synodality is the way of being the Church today, according to the will of God, in a dynamic of discerning and listening together to the voice of the Holy Spirit. We can say in a way, synodality is the call of God for the Church in the 21st century. It is our vocation as Church today. So being on a synodal journey, especially also as women, it's really a way to answer the call of God. It's not a matter, I like to do it or I don't want to do it. I like it or I don't like it. It's a matter of really answering and doing the will of God. And as religious, our call is really, and our adventure following Christ in religious life is really to answer the will of God. And I think maybe our main leadership role, we can say, is to transmit and to help all the baptized to understand that synodality is the call of God for today, and we have to do it all today together. At this time, as you know, it's a very special time because we are living with this synod on synodality, 21, now 24, it has been extended, the most important historical event since Vatican II. And as I am here, we began, and I like this experience here in Australia. I have it also in Canada, that we begin all our meeting by this acknowledgement. And I would like to do also a kind of personal acknowledgement, because speaking of women leadership and being in this role at the Vatican, it's really not alone, and I feel I am just a very small part of a long chain. And I often think about and refer to all those women leaders before me in the history, all those in which I feel very strong connected and in solidarity, who are now, and you are part of that, in the local churches. And I am often thinking about the first women who were called to be part, in a way, of the Second Vatican Council as observer. And you know that among, for the last two sessions, Paul VI has called a few women to come, and among them there was a great Australian woman, Rosemary Grundy. Yeah. So I often think about all those women, and in a way, I think if I am here today, it's also because they have opened doors. And so we feel today, and we live this synod on synodality really also as a fruit of the Second Vatican Council. And I would like to read this quote from one of the theologians who is in our Commission on Theology for the Synod, but it's not only him, and I really think like him, that for the first time in 2,000 years of church history, a synod is called to involve the entire people of God. Therefore, making a synod on synodality does not mean doing it on a team like many others. We had a synod on young people, a synod on family. At a time, some thought maybe we should have a synod on women, but we have a synod on the church, on synodality, and maybe it's there is a strong link also with women. We will talk about it. So this synod, it's about making a synod on the deeper identity of the church as communion and mission that becomes concrete, historically incisive, when it is participated by all. The church is such, in fact, only when it is carried on its shoulder by all, men and women, and shared in its earth by all, at the service of its brothers and sisters, especially beginning with the last, the discarded, and the existential and spiritual peripheries of our time. And you know that the vocation of religious life is mainly vocation prophetic, to be prophet and to be especially close to the poorest, to the discarded, and to the excluded. So we can't speak about synod, where we are now, where we are coming from, through this process in the Second Vatican Council and synod after synod, without speaking about the importance to listen to women. And if we speak about women leadership, first we need to think about the importance of listening to women, because the main feature for a synodal church, it is about to be a listening church. And that's why since the beginning and the opening of the synod in October 21 in Rome, 1 week after in all the dioceses in the world, and you know this synod has been launched with the publication, the release of a preparatory document, and then we had also a vademecum, some guidelines to leave the synod. We have really fostered on the importance of a wide participation, especially of those marginalized, vulnerable, excluded, or those who usually don't have a voice. And in every country, when you look at the statistics, everywhere, those who are the most sometimes marginalized, unemployed, the first victims of violence, of many problems, are always the women and the young. So when you speak about a process of listening and synodality, to put at the center the listening of those who are on the margin, you have to put this listening to the women, because everywhere they are usually almost the first victims. But they are not only victims. They have also, we learn and we see through history how the women have a kind of a great resilience and an ability, a capacity to be protagonist. And that's why we can see that through the experience of the women, we have listened to a kind of rewriting of the Gospel of Emmaus. That was very beautiful. But we can see many, many women, they live this journey of Emmaus, from disillusion, suffering, to an experience of consolation, conversion, to be active in the mission of the church. So this synodal process, with this emphasis to listen to the poorest and the marginalized, has really highlighted the voices of the women. And now I feel, and especially when we were drafting this document for the continental stage, maybe you have read it, or if not, I really encourage you to read it, working document for the continental stage, enlarge the space of your tent. This document has been drafted through a process of 12 days with a group of experts, men and women, religious, lay people, and priests from all over the world, after reading all the synthesis, the synodal synthesis from all over the world, each country, each bishops' conference, all the group who have participated, and writing and discerning what was coming through this listening of all the people all over the world through the synod. The main topic that was coming from everywhere, all kind of countries, was about women participation, women leadership in the church. And just the fact, I remind you that at the Second Vatican Council, there were a few women, but they were only observers. They couldn't talk in the big council assembly. All the parity, the experts at that time, the theologians, were only priests, you know. But when you look at our commissions now, those who are working as experts for the synod at all levels, in the dioceses, in the bishops' conference, and especially at a global level with us, you have many women. And that changed because they are also in the drafting of the document. So this document, you know, has been written also by women. And I would like to come back to situate where we are now, where we can go, to reflect back on the last two synods, because the topic of women and women leadership doesn't emerge just now through this synod. That make me feel that we can really speak about the women and the issue of women participation and women leadership as a sign of the time. But I really feel that through the involvement of women in this synod, and it's not about me, it's about many, many women like you and like many others who have been very active in this process of synodality at all levels, that I really feel it is the hour of women nowadays in the church. And that already began, especially during the Synod on Young People, because in 2018, there was this synod on young people, faith and vocational discernment, and I was very lucky to be part of the assembly in Rome with the bishops. We were at that time 7 sisters among the 350 participants, but there were also 39 young people as observers, lay people, and among them half of women. So the women have already played an important role, and after that, at the Synod on the Amazon, 10% of the participants of the assembly in Rome for the Synod on the Amazon were women. And listening to the young people through the process of the preparation of the synods and the pre-synod of young people in Rome with young people from all over the world, the topic of women was already very strong. And I want to quote in the final document of the Synod on Youth that the young people also clamor for greater recognition and greater valuing of women in society and in the church. Many women play an essential part in Christian communities, but often it is hard to involve them in decision-making processes, even when these do not require specific ministerial responsibilities. The absence of the feminine voice and perspective impoverishes debate and the church journey, depriving discernment of a precious contribution. The synod, so all the synodal fathers, cardinals and bishops, the synod recommends that everyone be made more aware of the urgency of an inevitable change, not least on the basis of anthropological and theological reflection on the reciprocity between men and women. And I think it was the first time in a church document that you have this vision also of reciprocity between men and women, our interrelation. And it's coming also from the presence and the active role of women during this Synod on Youth. So there was a very strong call at the Synod on Youth for a more synodal church, and in a way, missionary synodality came as an output of the Synod on young people, because young people have expressed the desire to be involved and appreciated and to feel themselves as having a key role in the life and mission of the church. And when they say that, they talk about the importance of women having also, like men, a key role in the life and mission of the church. And they have asked the church to practice synodality as a way of being and acting, promoting the participation of all the baptized and all of people of goodwill, each according to his age, state of life, and vocation. So you can see that the call for more women leadership in the church is really has already came strongly through the Synod on Youth, that has highlighted the importance to value the charisms of all the baptized, and especially the charism of women, and the importance to have a dynamic of co-responsibility in the church. So, motivated by this spirit, we can proceed towards a participatory and co-responsible church capable of valuing the wealth of the variety of which is composed, gratefully receiving the contributions of the lay faithful too, including young people and women, female and male consecrated persons, as well as group, association, and movements. And that's why we can say, and it is just growing, the awareness that women have a key role in a synodal church, and a church that seeks to live a synodal style cannot fail to reflect on the condition and role of women within it, and consequently in society more generally. Young men and women ask this question forcefully. The fruits of such reflection need to be implemented through a courageous change of culture and through change in daily pastoral practice. A sphere of particular importance in this regard is the female presence in ecclesial bodies at all levels, including positions of responsibility, as well as female participation in ecclesial decision-making processes, respecting the role of the ordained minister. This is a duty of justice. This is a duty of justice. This expression came in the final document. I'm still quoting the final document of the Synod on Youth, but then Pope Francis, when he wrote the post-synodal exhortation, Christus Vivit, as the result of all this process of Synod on Youth, take away this expression, it is a duty of justice. And in a way, my nomination, my appointment, but not only me, other kind of appointment at different levels, but we can say that what Pope Francis has done and is doing at the Vatican, because I am not the only one, now he has appointed also other women as Secretary of Dicastery, Vice President of the Governorate of the Vatican. For the first time now, you have 3 women who are members of the Dicastery for Bishops, so they take part to the discernment of those who could be new bishops. Last week, I had a first meeting, and I discovered that now in the Dicastery for Clergy, for the first time, you have a sister from South Korea. She's a biblical scholar who is part of the staff. So, you know, it's step by step, but it's not only at the Vatican, it's not enough. It's also at all levels. And I can share just a little bit my experience from France. because I have been working 10 years at the French Episcopal Conference. I was the first woman appointed as director of the National Office for Youth and for Vocations. Before, it has always been priest. And now, for the first time, you have also women as adjunct general secretary. In Germany, you have also, for the first time, a woman who is general secretary of the Bishops' Conference, and it's the same in 3 other Bishops' Conference: South Africa, South Sudan, Scandinavia. In France, now, a few bishops, and I think it's just the beginning, they have decided that for their leadership team, really their governance, they will not only have, it's mandatory, a vicar general, like in all dioceses, but they have a woman who is a little bit like a vicar general without the title. She's a general delegate, so that they really work together, the bishops, the vicar general, and this lay woman as a part really of the core team, we can say, of the bishops. And now in France, in all our bishops' council, you have lay people and women. That was not the case 20 years ago. And 1 year ago, the bishops in France, at the end of their plenary assembly, they have voted and decided that all seminaries in France should have at least one woman in the formation team and in the council of the seminary with the right of vote about the discernment of the candidate for priesthood. So it's, I quote France because it's my country, but I have met also here women as chancellors, those who were also very much involved in the plenary council, in the core team as facilitator were women. And that's what is very important, that we continue to find those ways, and we continue to listen to the clamor of women. And I quote, as I have expressed now from Christus Vivit, what really Pope Francis has written: a living church can react by being attentive to the legitimate claims of those women who seek greater justice and equality. The Church can support the call to respect women's rights and offer convinced support for greater reciprocity between females. The Synod sought to renew the Church's commitment against all discrimination and violence on sexual grounds. But it's not enough that it is written in a text of the magisterium, then it is how we implement that. And we can see that even if now there is a greater awareness and a strong call for women participation, gender equality in the society and in the Church is always in the Word, and each local church is also very much shaped by the culture, the history, the situation of the society. And it's true that we inherit in so many countries and culture of a pattern and many, many years and centuries of kind of domination of men above women, a patriarchal mindset. It is changing, it has already changed, but not all the countries are doing the same journey at the same rhythm. 2 weeks ago, I was in India for the first time to visit the church there, to listen about their synodal experience, but also there was a big theological conference about synodality with many theologians and a good number of sisters, a few also lay women, and I was very impressed because they really spoke up. But you can feel that in a country like India, still very much shaped by the caste system, by a very patriarchal mindset, you know, living the equality of men and women, living synodality as brothers and sisters in Christ is really a big challenge. And not only for the Catholic Church. Last week also, that was a very good experience for me. The Dicastery for Interreligious Dialogue in Rome has organized a conference, a meeting about women in interreligious dialogue, and they have invited women from 12 different religions from all continents. So there were a few women who are rabbi, some women in the Sikh religion or Buddhist who have also leadership role. And we all shared, when we listen everyone, that almost all our scriptures, our teaching is talking about equality between men and women. But then the reality, the practical experience in all our religion is not exactly that. And for me, that was very inspiring and very also helpful to meet other women from other religions and to realize, yes, we are all struggling and trying to continue to work for this path of reciprocity, mutual respect, equal dignity, and real partnership together as men and women in our church, in our religions, but in the society. And even if we know now a woman can be CEO or prime minister, when you listen to many of them, and I had also a chance to have regularly some discussions with political leaders and women engaged in politics, they will tell you that it's not easy. So that's the situation. So, but what we know and what helps us, in a way, is that this is the roadmap, you know, and it's clear, as I have reminded us at the beginning, that the church has to become more and more synodal, to highlight and really live the church as people of God, all equal. A church as people of God, men and women together, journeying together with this vision of reciprocity, and to be co-responsible in this participatory church. And this, for the moment, I have referred a lot to the Synod on Youth because I was there, and it was really through this listening to the young people that the question of women leadership has been all the more strong. But the Synod on the Amazon has also very much, through a process of listening to the cries of the women at the Synod on the Amazon, it has highlighted that in so many places you have really situation of suffering of women, but how their presence is very important. And I quote now, "We recognize the ministries that Jesus reserved for women. It is necessary to promote the formation of women in biblical theology, systematic theology, and canon law, valuing their presence in organizations and leadership within the church environment and beyond. We want to strengthen family ties, especially for migrant women. We assure women's place in leadership and formation. We ask that the motu proprio of St. Paul VI Ministeria Quaedam be revised so that women who have been properly trained and prepared can receive the ministry of lector and acolyte, among others, to be developed." And it has happened, you know. It's also a great change. For the first time now, women in the church can receive an instituted ministry as lector, acolyte, and now catechist. Pope Francis has changed and revised as it was asked by the Synod on the Amazon. And the Synod on the Amazon has also asked that an instituted ministry of women community leadership be created and recognized as part of meeting the changing demands of evangelization and care for communities. We don't have yet this instituted ministry, but we have already in many, many places the women who are really the leader of the Christian community. And before coming here, we were talking about the experience and the church in the Pacific Islands. And I remind well, because, you know, France, we have French territory not far from you, in New Caledonia, Marquis Islands, Tahiti. So the bishops there, they belong both to their local Pacific Bishops' Conference, but also to the Bishops' Conference of France. and they come once a year. So when I was director of this national office for youth and vocation, I took part every year to the plenary of the bishops in Lourdes. And I remember well, once the bishop have decided that they should talk more about women's participation in the church. And at the time, the bishop from Marquis Islands in the began to say, "Oh, you know, what I see in my island is that really those who are leading the church, who are leaders of the community, are the women. Because when the missionary came, they discovered that the women had a very important role in the family, and they have decided, because they couldn't at the beginning have education for all, they have decided to focus on schooling and education for women. So they became the first to be educated, and they became the first to have a responsibility in our church. And this bishop, among all the French bishops, say, and you know, it's working very well." And I recommend. So that's the kind of example. So what is good, and what I hope it has already been done through the two former synods, but it's also really what we see now all over the world with this synod, is that the synod is really a process of listening to the cries of the victims, the cries of the women, and it operates in a way as a sound box for women's voice, and it really open and help all the church, and I hope also the society, to hear this call for greater recognition and greater valuing of women in society and in the church. And I often say, now she's away, but she has already listened to me, Ambassador Chiara Porro, that, you know, the fact that now at the Vatican, you have 20 women ambassadors, like your ambassador from Australia. And in France, now we have the second woman ambassador. 20 years ago, all the ambassadors were men. Now you have a good group of women ambassadors. So the Pope interact more and more with women ambassadors, with women who are prime minister, president in their country. So the Secretariat of States, the dicasteries, you know, they deal more and more with women as political leaders, with women as president of Caritas, with women as president of Catholic University. 30 years ago, you had no women president of a big Catholic university. I don't know in Australia, but in United States now, you have more and more women. You know, I refer again to my experience in the Church of France, where about 8 years ago, we had for the first time a woman as president of Caritas. She had a really strong voice, not only in the church, in the society, and she was regularly asked to speak to all the bishops, and so that's also women's leadership, you know, and we need to recall that the church is not just the parish or the diocesan structure. The church is all the diversity of, we can say, the different bodies of the church. So the religious life, we know in so many countries how women religious have been leaders since many years, and you have great examples here. How they are doing also now in schools, universities, charities. That's the church also. So that's where we are. And we need to continue to journey together, as this logo is trying to express. And if you look at this logo, among those who are journeying for the synodal journey, you have both men and women and different generations. But the most important, and I think that's really the challenge for today, there is this common call, as I have tried to express, for more women leadership, women participation. It's coming from everywhere, but how to implement that, what to do concretely, what kind of answers, you don't have an unique view. and you don't have yet a very clear roadmap. So we have to discern, and that's the most important into the synodal process. The most important protagonist is the Holy Spirit. So the synodal path is not a path written in advance. It's a creative, open path. And we can't just impose some kind of solution that will divide the church. We need to journey together. And the aim of a synodal process is to reach and find consensus. Because you can't just, change very quickly something if you lose 70% of the people, So the starting point for synodality is always the concretedness, the situation where we are, the church of today that inherit from a long history, a church in which we are not only women, we are men and women. The studies that has been done or the listening of the Catholic women, shows that you don't have a unique way of being a Catholic woman. You have a great diversity. Not all women are calling for ordination. There are some, but for others, the most important in this stage is really that the church help women to get out inequalities, violence, and so you have different views. And I think a way to understand the situation today, in a more, we can say, theological, is that, as I have expressed, we are more and more clear, and there is this greater awareness that there is a fundamental equality. We have an equal dignity, but it's not yet implemented. So we are in a kind of what a theologian from Italy who has been working, has done a work on the question of men and women in the church. He speaks of a conflictual equality, because we have this theoretical equality, but practically it's not everywhere that men and women are paid the same thing for the same work. They are still. But and the roadmap is about how we can think together this fundamental equality, and yet there is an inescapable difference. It's true, there is a difference between men and women. I don't think we can say the women are like this, the men are like this, but there is a kind of elusive difference, a mystery of the difference. But we are called to be together, men and women, in the church and in the society. And we have to find ways to deal with this difference. I often say, because I really think that the best thing God has created is that we have been created men and women. And that the difference between men and women is a kind of matrix of all differences. And in a way, the synodal process, and I refer to the logo, if you can keep it in mind, it's a way to foster communion, to find unity, but not everybody with the same color, through and with differences. And the way we deal with this mystery of our difference, but also equal dignity, and a call for being together also in leadership. So this question of unity in diversity, the way we'll deal about that for men and women is the kind of matrix for the way we deal with all kind of difference. Difference of culture, difference of generation, and often I say from my own experience of young people, that we need to think about intergenerational dialogue or living together in our community, in our church, younger and older. It's almost the same as intercultural dialogue, because we didn't grow up in the same world. And this question of women leadership is also is linked also to the experience of the different generation. And I can really see that in my experience in France at the Vatican also with priests and bishops. You know, the older generation, many of the bishops, cardinals who are now old, they grew up, they enter the minor seminary very young, then they go to the major seminary. So they have been in an environment mainly with men all their life. The younger generation, more and more, they grew up in co-ed schools. They study at university, men and women. They work. Sometimes they had a woman as a boss. So they have a completely other way to think about leadership. When I was appointed director of this national office, you know, for youth and vocation, I had at the same time a vice director was appointed, and he was a priest. In a way, he was more feminist than me. So for him, it was not a problem to be a diocesan priest as my vice director. But an older priest tell him, but have you think about that? Do you really think you can work with a woman as a boss? For him, it has never been a question. And for the young interns I had in this office, you know, there was no difference to have a woman or so we need to think also about the change with this change of generation. I think I have to close. So I will stop here. We could say many things, but I really invite you for the continental stage, the part about sisters and brothers for mission in the chapter 3, communion, participation and co-responsibility, in which we talk about this strong call for more, and I quote just the beginning of the paragraph, rethinking women's participation, paragraph 60, the call for a conversion of the church culture for the salvation of the world is linked in concrete terms to the possibility of establishing a new culture with new practices and structure. A critical and urgent area in this regard concerns the role of women and their vocation, rooted in our common baptismal dignity to participate fully in the life of the Church. A growing awareness and sensitivity towards this issue is registered all over the world. And not only from and by women, but more and more also the question of women leadership is carried on by more and more men, priests, bishops, and even the Pope, who is a strong, working also to give more women leadership. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Natalie. You give us hope. You give us hope. Moving from theoretical equality, documented equality, to conflictual equality. I liked that one amongst many of the things you said. To let you know how the rest of the afternoon, half an hour will go, is you now have an opportunity to talk to each other at your tables. Each of you is part of that small chain, a small part of a long chain of creating change in our church, creating a more synodal church, and this conversation continues to be part of that. So I invite you now to have a conversation at your table about whatever you like, perhaps what struck you most, whether something surprised you, whether there's something you absolutely need to say to Sister Natalie. And you've got about 7 minutes, not long I know, but 7 minutes to have a talk, and then an opportunity for some of you to ask question or make a comment. So I'll bring you back in 7 minutes or so, open up some questions. We'll have 2 roving mics with Teresa and Taylor, thank you. And then after that, afternoon tea. So have a chat. So I'll invite you now, if anyone would like to, share either their own thinking or question or something from the table. to continue the conversation with Sister Natalie this afternoon. As part of this debate, this opportunity for voice.
At our table, we were interested in the phrase reciprocity between men and women, and we thought that's a difference in way of speaking about it rather than complementarity. And we wondered if you'd like to talk about why that change was made.
Yes, thank you. In fact, I really think, and I don't very much like to use the term complementarity, because you could have the idea with complementarity that the men have something that women don't have, and the women have something that the men don't have. You know, like two pieces of the same puzzle. And in fact, I think that being a woman or being a man is a way to relate to the world, to relate to the other, and it's two different ways. But you can't really say, the risk, and the church sometimes has done that, has tried to essentialize and to say, the men are like this or the women are like this. But if you go back to the biblical anthropology and the call of God, also what we have discerned, men and women are called to for an alliance, for, we can say in a more modern term, a partnership for communion. But the fact that we are different, not with this view of complementarity in the sense that we don't have the same thing, but we can look at men as a man as a whole and a woman as a whole. It's true that our relationship at the time will be difficult. That's to face the difference. So for me, the encounter between men and women is a Paschal journey, a true collaboration, a true journey together in so many ways. And all those who are married know that. If we work in a long time in collaboration, because we don't see the thing exactly in the same way. We have different glasses, But what we know and what we experience, well, that's my experience, the more we are in a relationship, we walk together, we build friendship, we build partnership, the more because you walk with someone different, you will discover your true femininity as women, or your true masculinity as men. So in that sense, I think really we are built for reciprocity. We need each other, and it's also because the vision of the ecclesiology of a synodal church is rooted and articulated, we can say, with a relational anthropology. That is also the biblical anthropology. So we can't think about men without women, and we can't think about women without men. So it is this vision of mutuality, reciprocity, and I think it's interesting that now in the church documents, and I see it was a novelty at the Synod on Youth, we highlight this notion of reciprocity. That is the key word for synodality. Not only about men and women, but about all kinds of differences.
Merci, Sister Natalie. I've really appreciated what you've had to say. Very inspiring and insightful. So my name's Elizabeth. I'm a Sister of Mercy, and I've been extremely privileged in being part of this order, which has given me so many opportunities and encouraged me in lots of ways. I'm starting a ministry as a catechist, instituted catechist, in a remote community, Aboriginal community predominantly. And I really feel a call to liturgical ministry on the margins. And I've only had these opportunities because of being part of such an order. And many things that people coming after me, I feel, won't have. So I'm wondering about younger people, younger women particularly, coming in the future and what opportunities they might have in a synodal church. Thank you.
You know, I think what is very important for, especially for young women, and we have also seen that through the Synod on Youth, to grow up as men or as women, you need role models. You need figures above you. I couldn't be the sister I am today, the woman I am today, without all the encounters, the mentors who have accompanied me, the empowerment I have received from so many women, sisters, and so we need that. And it's true that if women, young women, you know, in front of them in church, liturgy, leadership, they only see men, it will be very difficult for them. So a key issue that is coming in that you can read also about in the as a fruit of the synodal consultation is also the question of liturgy and the call for more synodal liturgy. You know, but there are already many things we can do. You know, at the end of the Synod on Youth, because each synod is rooted in the Eucharist, so it is opened by an opening Eucharist and closed by a Eucharist. During the Synod on Youth, as I have tried to express, I have lived the church we dream, in which all could be really protagonists, the young people, the women. We were able already to have a great collaboration with the bishops and priests who were there. So we have lived that in a true spirit of fraternity, work together. At the end, for the first time, in a way also to translate that in the liturgy, in St. Peter's Basilica, for the closing Eucharist presided by Pope Francis. We were called, all of us were called to be in the entrance procession and the closing procession. But just the fact to be in the procession with all the bishops, cardinals, as a woman, and you enter St. Peter with the crowd everywhere, for me it was really, really, really very powerful. So you have many ways, also to highlight and to find ways to have active participation in the liturgy, as it is said in the documents of the Second Vatican Council, and then at a local, also in a parish, there are many things that can be done, but we need also some within. We can, and maybe things will continue to change, but already with what we can do, there are already many possibilities. But how do we really invest or use what it is possible to do?
I'm Veronica, I'm a Dominican sister, and I've taught liturgy for 30 years at the Australian Catholic University and the Catholic Institute in Sydney and in New Guinea and in the United States. And I have a circle of friends who are liturgists, the same generation, where we've been lucky to be trained, as you were saying, being members of religious orders often. My concern is who is going to pay young people to be trained well, to take over this experience and the knowledge and be formed well. And I think particularly of the church now having the new ministry of catechist, we've relied on volunteer people, often elderly people who have been doing this for years, And that's a great service, but we need to be able to train them and actually support them financially, some kind of way. And I'm pleased to say that the bishops in Australia have appointed a laywoman who at her own expense largely and through scholarships was able to get the training to become Professor of Liturgy. But it's not a common experience yet.
Yes, it's true, as you highlight, if we want to move forward into this synodal journey, we need to find ways really to continue to empower lay people in many, many different ways, and also as what we call in many countries ecclesial minister or theologians, or and in that sense, at a time, it's also how we can imagine some active policy, some kind of policies or some actions. You know, so the contexts are different, but yes, I think it's really an issue. For instance, just an example, it's not in liturgy, but it's in canon law at the Catholic University of Paris. They have realized that they still don't have so many women who study canon law, and for the moment, they have no women professor at the Faculty of Canon Law of the Catholic University of Paris, and say it's not possible. So they have implemented a program with scholarship ready to support more women to study canon law, to try to mentor them, to identify those who could go to do a doctorate, and so that then they become, but it's a choice at the moment, yes, to say we need that. So we have to be creative, yeah, in many ways. But in many countries, you also have now more and more young people, young Catholics, who really want to serve the church. And it's true that I think it's different according to the countries, but almost everywhere now you have women theologians and women professor of theology. And so it's also like this that things change. And maybe you know, for instance, that I've learned that in United States, after the Second Vatican Council, religious life of congregations, in religious life, they have decided that it is very important now to have also sisters who do theology, and they have decided that one among 100 should go and study theology and possible get a doctorate. So, but that was a decision, you know. I was talking also about India. Now you have more and more women theologians, but it's still very difficult for them to find permanent. But it's also the problem, I have heard by many, that most of them who are theologians who have their doctorate, then they are called to be in administrative or formation work for the community, or they become provincial and superior general. So you don't have really sisters who are really dedicated for theology research, and so we all have a kind of responsibility, not all the same, but we all can do something. And especially, I think this time, and for this question, is it's nobody alone. So the more we can do it in synergy, network, intercongregational work with others, the more it will bear fruit. It's not a community alone or nobody alone.
Maria will be the second last question. Mm-hmm. So one more after Maria, please.
This is a follow-up from Elizabeth's question about liturgy. Several years ago, when I was much younger, I heard an interview with two women on the radio. They had both been ordained priests by Pope Pius XII during the war. There was no priest. One was in the Middle Europe, and I can't remember which country exactly. And so it was a most wonderful interview. And at the end, the interviewer said, "Were you told not to practice anymore?" And they said, "No. We knew that we were ordained at a particular moment in history when the need was great, and the Pope ordained us. So when the war was over and some of the priests returned to their places, they just stopped practicing as priests." So I thought, history, it has happened.
Merci, Natalie, thank you so much. My name's Mary, I'm a sister of St Joseph, part of Mary MacKillop's mob. At our table we talked about the critical aspect, crucial aspect of language. And language can change the mindset. For example, I was at Mass on Sunday in a most wonderful parish, one of the best parishes in Australia, I reckon. But the first reading was read by a young woman, and she said, "Dear brothers," didn't include sisters. So language is crucial for changing our hearts and our mindset. When are we going to get inclusive language in our lectionaries and throughout the world? Thank you.
I think it's difficult to answer the question. And also what I see is that, you know, that's maybe the greatest challenge for our church, that is both a universal global church, but a church of local churches with so many different languages and culture. So this sensitivity to inclusive language for the moment is not exactly the same in all speaking group, you know. It's very strong in English-speaking countries like United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It's beginning in some kind of French-speaking country. It's interesting because when I was appointed at the Vatican, so the main language is still Italian at the Curia, but even if we use other language, maybe you have seen that the new Prime Minister Meloni in Italy, she doesn't want to have a feminine title, so in Italian it's ministero. And so there was a debate there to check if my title in Italian could be Sottosegreteria, the female way, or Sottosecretario. And it's still, because in Italian language it's like this, so it's Sottosecretario, the official in the Vatican official. But on my visit card, I have put Sottosecretaria, and then it's Undersecretary. But just to highlight that, you know, so the biggest challenge is how to continue to be one church, but with such also diversity of languages, culture, local context, histories. But maybe we have to rediscover, as I have said, that from the beginning we have 4 different gospels to tell the same story, but not exactly to the same people. And then to see, you know, according to our local context, to discern what could be possible or not. I know there are some communities who are already doing this work on inclusive language. In my community, because we have sisters in Canada, so we have been open to all this question. It was not yet very strong in France. So our last general chapter, we had to revise our constitution, our book of rules, and we have everywhere when we were speaking about homme in French, we have changed for inclusive language. But you know, that's also part of the discernment and journey. So we need to do what we can do at local level where we are, but for what is also has to be decided at the universal level, we need to remind that we are not alone, and we need to broaden our vision of the church to include all the diversity of the context, topic, issues. Thank you.
Thank you all for your contributions. Thank you to Sister Natalie for your care, your intelligence and your passion. We're very grateful. But I'd now like to call up Evelyn Crotty to say thank you more eloquently than me on behalf of all of us as congregational leader of the Institute of Mercy of Australia and Papua New Guinea.
Well, it's my very great pleasure and privilege to actually say thank you. Your warm presence and your wonderful presentation has been marvellous for us all. Would you all agree? Just. And in this room, sitting here, as I look around, there are so many women leaders here who have worked tirelessly for many years and are still opening doors, I believe, for young women to actually come through. So we're still striving to be strong women, resilient, love our church, but also to really challenge it in all different kinds of ways along the way. We totally believe in the synodal way of working, but I think as you gave us today, it's not only the ideal, it really is a difficult thing to do because we are so entrenched in old ways of behaviour and doing things. But we're not going to stop, are we? We're going to keep going, and we promise you we will support you all the way in what you're doing. So thank you. Thank you.
Just to say thank you, and we are in communion on this ongoing synodal path to continue. Thank you so much. It was a blessing to be with you.
Thank you all, and I invite you over to Andaliti Lodge for half an hour of afternoon tea. Thank you.